Reddit. What's the scariest thing created by nature? Story 1. Irukandji Jellyfish. Tiny and extremely venomous jellyfish. Irukandji jellyfish were at one time thought to be in the northern waters of Australia only. Since then, according to a National Geographic documentary on jellyfish, the species has been found in waters as far north as the British Isles, Japan, and the Florida coast of the United States. Irukandji syndrome is produced by a small amount of venom and induces severe pain at various parts of the body, typically excruciating muscle cramps in the arms and legs, severe pain in the back and kidneys, a burning sensation of the skin and face, headaches, nausea, restlessness, sweating, vomiting, an increase in heart rate and blood pressure, and psychological phenomena such as the feeling of impending doom. Damn Australia, exporting monsters again. Story 2. Necrotizing Fasciitis. It's a bacteria that eats flesh, a tiny little thing that eats away your flesh, and it's in you. I had an infection with this when I was 13. It all started with an abrasion on my knee that I got because I fell. About 2 weeks after I fell on Saturday evening, I complained to my mom that my knee hurt and that I was feeling ill, but my mom didn't think too much of it. The next morning, it hurt even worse. I wasn't hungry, felt ill, and I could feel my knee pulsing. In about 2 hours, the pain got much more intense to the point I couldn't move my knee without screaming and crying in pain. So we went to the ER. We were waiting there to get a doctor to look at it. We still didn't know what it was. But the other people let me go before them because in 3 hours, I went from looking like a healthy young boy to looking like I was dying. The doctors made an x ray scan but couldn't see anything. By the way, I almost puked over the x ray generator. They went to an examination room and another doctor took a look at my knee to see how it looked. In 5 minutes, I saw 12 doctors standing around me and nurses coming in with injections. For the 15 minutes I can remember after that, there were nurses coming in and out with injections with antibiotics and saline. In total, I got around 25 injections in 15 to 30 minutes. I can't remember exactly. The next day, I woke up with 2 IV lines with antibiotics and a heart monitor hooked up to me in an IC room. After that, I stayed for another 2 weeks in the hospital with intensive antibiotic treatment and, after that, 2 months on antibiotic pills. I remember that they MRI scanned me a couple of times during my stay there, and that when you looked at my knee, you could see a huge black spot in the middle of my knee. They also told me that the saline injections were to keep my blood pressure up. The doctors told me that if I would have come in an hour later, they probably would have amputated my leg. And if I had come in 2 hours later, the chances of me surviving would be minimal. It still is the most intense pain I have ever experienced. After that, I walked around with a huge black spot on my knee for 2 years. Story 3. Toxoplasma gondii. It's a parasite that affects rats, which actually alters the rat's behavior, making it more likely to be eaten by a cat. So, it's a brain parasite that can override your natural survival instinct and make you want to end your life. Don't worry though, it's not like half of the human population is already known to be infected or anything. Toxoplasmosis is not a huge issue for humans, unless you have a weak immune system or are pregnant. Most people are infected completely without symptoms, since Toxoplasma gondii is not specialized on human tissue. You know what slightly common pathogen is really a scary behavior changing brain manipulating mofo? Rabies. A successful infection of rabies has a 100% fatality rate. The pathogen makes you delirious and aggressive enough to try to beat, scratch, and bite other people, and makes you actively avoid water, so the virus cannot get diluted in vivo. The patient can't even swallow his own spit, hence the foam on the mouth, making it much more potent. Loss of communication skills is typical and gets replaced by animalistic grunts, shouts, cries, and so on. This is a process not only happening in animals, but also in humans. After a while, a rational, intelligent man may become the wildest, aggressive beast around, while the virus keeps gradually eating his brain, slowly finishing him in the process, all the while trying to manipulate him in such ways that it's easy for the virus to spread itself. full-on zombification in process. This is an infection I would be scared crapless of. Story 4. Dimethylmercury. A drop or two on your skin, something you'd never feel, and about 6 months later, your brain starts to get a little foggy. Your memory slowly gets worse over the next few months, and your personality fades. A few months later, and you just slip into a coma and die. Happened accidentally to a chemist in the 90s when she dribbled a little on her gloves. And unbeknownst to her and many others in science, it easily penetrated lab gloves. By the time they figured it out, it was months too late. Story 5. Komodo dragons are pretty terrifying. They look fairly mild-mannered, but they can sprint short distances and may or may not be venomous. The real horror is in how they feed. I read a description of 3 dragons feasting on a water buffalo. They don't have sharp enough teeth to rip off chunks of hide, so they just squirmed into the poor beast's insides and ate from there. It wouldn't be nearly so bad if they finished their victim quickly, but that is not their preferred method of rolling. Story 6. People. Organic machines that can think in the abstract and enact powerful changes to their own environment to a huge extent. Nature evolved a species that's subverting the process that caused it to exist. Humans are like the uber keystone species. We modify and adapt our environments to such a magnificent scale that we have trouble even comprehending the effects we're having. People are recently considering the idea that the Amazon is one giant orchard or garden that's grown wild. Not sure where they're at with it, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's true. Recent evidence supports the hypothesis that early humans restructured large carnivore communities. We thought before that Africa is basically pristine because animal communities had time to adapt to early humans. That's probably not true. We're bringing massive scale change to our biosphere in a way that is completely unprecedented as far as we know. Many of the things we're doing will have extremely negative consequences both to us and to the biosphere, but we're probably going to start doing things that will produce, if not a net benefit, a neutral effect. We might even decide that being biological isn't cool anymore, or even useful. Nature created something that studied it, learned from it, and then superseded it with a better, more efficient invention. Story 7. The Ebola hemorrhagic fever, or Ebola virus disease, and to be more specific, Zaire Ebola virus, ZEBOV. This virus has a 90% fatality rate, although that doesn't sound high. If left untreated, the Ebola Zaire strain has a 100% fatality rate in the human body. If inflicted, all patients show some extent of coagulopathy and impaired circulatory system symptomology. Bleeding from mucous membranes and puncture sites is reported in 40 to 50% of cases, while maculopapular rashes are evident in approximately 50% of cases. Sources of bleeds include hematemesis, hemoptysis, melena, and aforementioned bleeding from mucous membranes, gastrointestinal tract, nose, and gingiva. Diffuse bleeding, however, is rare and is usually exclusive to the gastrointestinal tract. So, this virus evolved to abolish human life, destroy humans from the inside by causing all of your living cells to die, break down, and bleed out. You bleed to death from the inside as your internal organs liquefy and actually ooze out of you from every orifice. Your only hope is that your brain is destroyed quick enough that you go insane before your major organs liquefy as going insane. Numbs the extraordinary pain involved with death from this particular strain of virus. Story 8. There's a small island called Ilha de Queimada Grande off the coast of São Paulo, Brazil, that is home to the highest concentration of golden lancehead vipers, one of the most venomous species of snake in the world. The island is so densely packed with these snakes that there are up to 5 per square meter of the island. The Brazilian Navy bans civilians from the island, simply because it is impossible to survive long on the island. Apparently, there was only a lighthouse keeper who lived on the island with his family, but they did not survive long. After a while, snakes crawled through their windows. Panicking, they ran outside into the forest, where they were confronted with thousands of more snakes. and were bitten numerous times running through the forest by snakes hanging overhead by branches. They all died before they reached their boat. Oh, also, the golden lancehead vipers are unique to this island alone, and its venom causes your flesh to rot off your bones. Some screwed up crap. Story 9. Bobbit Worms. They're a predatory worm that can grow up to 3 meters long. They can strike so fast that they sometimes slice their prey in half. They burrow underground, and when something swims by, they grab it and forcefully yank it down into the burrow underground. Underwater, babies are hard to detect and can be transported in coral later to be used in household aquariums. You will notice your fish disappearing one by one until the only thing left in the tank is a 10-foot-long monstrosity. It will even eat the coral. It has venomous spines that can cause permanent numbness, and they can chew through human bone. Story 10. The jewel wasp, also known as the emerald cockroach wasp, is a parasitic wasp that injects various mind-controlling toxins into a cockroach's brain, then leads the roach back to its burrow where its hatched larvae ultimately slowly eat the still-living cockroach's body from the inside out. The wasp starts by stinging the cockroach around its midsection. This temporarily paralyzes the roach's front legs, allowing the wasp to make a much more precise sting into the part of the roach's brain that controls its ability to walk. Once the wasp has injected its venom into the cockroach's brain, it leads the roach back to a burrow by gently pulling on the antennae like a leash, which provides enough external stimulus to coax the zombified cockroach to walk. Once in the burrow, the wasp lays an egg on the roach's abdomen. It then exits the burrow and blocks up the hole. About 3 days later, a little larva is hatched and proceeds to feed on the delectable roach. The larva doesn't actually eat all the roach right away. The roach is still alive when the baby wasp chews into its abdomen and proceeds to live there as a parasite. Over the next week or so, the larva eats the roach's internal organs in such an order that the roach will stay alive for quite some time, 4 or 5 days. Story 11. Retroviruses. They use reverse engineering or programming to end us. We have DNA as our major building block of life. This is transcribed into RNA, which is then used as a template to build things the cell needs, mainly making proteins. Retroviruses use RNA as DNA, so to speak. They inject their RNA code into our cells, and using our transcription process in reverse, our cells then build virus DNA and put it in their own genome. They are now reprogrammed to build viruses until they die, literally bursting with viruses. Pretty damn alien scary to me. Story 12. Cordyceps. It's a genus of a few hundred species of fungi. But these aren't things like algae, moss, or mushrooms, the typical fungi people think. No, these are parasitic fungi. Wait, did I say parasitic fungus? Because that's really disingenuous. Normally, when we think of a parasite, we think of a nuisance, some bacteria that don't sit well with you. Maybe it makes you spew out of both ends. Cordyceps aren't so overt. When the cordyceps infects its host, it just plays it cool. It ferments, grows acclimated, until the cordyceps decide, screw it, this is my body now. And you know what it does? It takes control of the animal. It turns the animal into something between a zombie and a robot. The animal is essentially dead, but it still moves around at the bidding of this fungus. The corpse then gets the fungus growth erupting out, until the spores explode. If an ant colony doesn't remove an affected ant, the fungus will then have control of an entire squadron of exploding robot zombies. Scary. You're safe for now. There is no known cordyceps species that affects humans. But just wait. Story 13. This condition is called fatal familial insomnia. Basically, you get insomnia that progressively worsens until you can't fall asleep anymore and you just die. There's more to it, but that's the basics of it. I've always found this haunting. Unlike the typically mute FFI patient whose subjective serenity is unknowable, DF described his oniric sleep as extremely gentle and pleasant, like entering a room filled with everyone who he would want to encounter. including deceased friends and relatives who would tell him that everything will be all right. In his words, to the outside world, I am dead and gone, but to myself, I'm still here in this wonderful place, and it is they who have disappeared. His waking REM was multisensory and included images, voices, and scents. It was experienced as a form of knowing everything about himself, with no more hidden secrets. As might be expected from a sustained handshake between the right and left hemispheres, DF's conscious mind experienced himself in a global way. He described his unconscious as filled with wounded children who bore poor witness to events that had injured them, unable to logically evaluate or rise above these damaging experiences. His FFI put him in the unique position to soothe these children with adult insight, which he often did in the form of written letters when he was offline. Those interested in psychoanalytic theory and or multiple personality disorder may learn a great deal from FFI patients. The door that admitted DF into this other world became best defined after long periods of insomnia and was so inviting that he believed that others who have been in this place simply gave into it and allowed themselves to die. In fact, DF's fight against FFI specifically centered on this arena, with the wish to surrender to its serenity as opposed to his real life of handicap and degeneration. Story 19. First, something cool and scary. In a semi-distant, semi-close future, we can make a bomb that can eradicate all life on a planet, a planetary reset. Now something scary. Falling. I can't go on most rides, and elevators make me feel sick. The feeling of falling, the feeling that you're far from in control, the feeling that your death is probably near, the feeling that you don't know what will happen, when it will happen, or how it will happen, the feeling that when you're falling, you can wish all you want for a miracle for it to stop, but the only thing you might get is surviving in a world of hurt, the feeling that when on a roller coaster, that at any point in time, you can fall out. I hate the feeling of falling. It is the most terrifying thing I can think of. Though abandonment, being hated, forgotten, etc., is also very scary. Falling is 3 times worse. Story 20th. First world governments. Okay, so my 3 greatest fears for sure in no particular order. Sharks, tornadoes, the government. To me, nothing is scarier than something that can absolutely eat you, and there's nothing you can do about it. All 3 things will pluck you from your life and consume you. That is terrifying. You did say real, though. So, what thing scares me the most? Existence itself. The fact that reality exists and the fact that it exists in the exact way that it does, including billions of conscious beings that have no idea or recollection of how reality began or what the heck any of us are doing here, or why some of us hurt the rest of us, and why most of us won't do anything about it like it's not happening. People scream and wail about God and their stout belief in heaven and hell, and yet never act as if it's real. People will spout off about how much they love God, but will never touch a psychedelic that claims to potentially link them with their divinity. I mean, on Earth alone, 99% of all species that have existed have gone extinct, dude. What does that mean? Anything? If it means nothing, that is just as scary as if it were profound. Why is the universe so goddamned big, dude? It's massive. It defies human comprehension. It's so big. But why? Why is the cosmos so much larger than any conscious being could ever hope to understand? It's as if there's some larger unified consciousness that is simply simulating individuality because it's the only conscious being in existence, like a god or something. But even that would be mind-boggling because does this being have a beginning or end? My point is that the overwhelming mystery of conscious existence is easily the scariest thing I can think of, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily real. Story 16. Chlorine Trifluoride. It's a better oxidizer than oxygen. It will vigorously burn things like most metals, bricks, sand, concrete, and asbestos, all the while degrading into boring things like superheated hydrofluoric acid and hydrochloric acid. Just kidding, that's terrifying. Not to mention, hydrofluoric acid is incredibly poisonous. So if you survive the explosion or fire from spilling it, you might still die from poisoning. How do you put out a CLF3 fire? You run away, fast. It doesn't need oxygen to burn since it's better at burning than oxygen. Powder fire extinguisher? Yeah, it'll burn the powder. Water? Ha. CLF3 explodes on contact with water. Good thing no one will ever make it on purpose, right? Used all the time in the semiconductor industry and for processing nuclear fuel. You can keep it in a metal container as long as you passivate the surface inside. Otherwise, you guessed it, it'll burn that too. The only container that will simply hold it without an asterisk is quartz glass, but only at below 180 degrees Celsius. I don't know who heated up a quartz glass container of liquid to 180 degrees Celsius to find out, but they are better than me. I was being given a tour of a semiconductor facility and locked eyes with a container of it. Tour guide grinned when he saw me keeping my distance, even with several barriers. Once he explained what it was, everyone else did too. Story 17. Right now, it is the meteoric rise of China and the people in the US, especially who casually talk about the restriction of free expression. Also, morons like Prince William, who is calling for an effective moratorium on space travel so we can work on climate change. That is the very kind of insular thinking that sent China into a 500-year hole. But I'm sure they will pick up the baton, just as the West did 500 years ago. And by the way, they will be an increasingly large emitter, which is okay by the standards of people like Greta, who doesn't even scold them. Not even a little. Same with the other climate activists. Hypocrisy all over the place. Story 18. Bigfoot is so scary you have a 50% chance of losing control of your waste disposal units. And it is real. 3 out of 5 people in my family have seen at least one, and it haunts you. You're going to think about it with dread every day for the rest of your life. Messed up, they are shockingly huge. They could not stand up straight in your house. Even scarier are tsunamis, the big ones. Holy crap! What's going to happen if the poles flip? Are we going to lose our protective layer of ozone and the Van Allen belt and all that? Because the living would envy the dead. Story 14. Venomous snakes. Did you know a king cobra can growl at you? It's one of the scariest sounds in existence. Maybe the scariest. Like, you can hear anger in that growl. And they can spit venom in your eyes. And a bite from one is almost a guaranteed death sentence. Rattlesnakes scare the hell out of me. They're somewhat common in areas where I live. I do a lot of hiking and have thankfully never encountered one. Even if you survive the bite, chances are you'll lose whatever part of you got bit. Or at the very least, permanent nerve damage. I know there are snake people out there who think they're beautiful creatures, but I just don't get it, man. Story 15. Being psychotic and losing grip on yourself. Feeling all norms and values slip away and dissolve into your own void. Not caring a crap about anything or anyone. Your last fragments of reality desperately, trying not to just end that jerk that bumped into you, or just wanting to stab that other girl's eyes out because she looked your way and laughed, even if it was about something else. The pure hatred and anger flowing through you when you see someone being wronged after enduring nearly a dozen years of bullying, mental, physical torment because someone found it cute over 30 years ago. The combination leads to a hate, which can be all-consuming, leaving you devoid of any value for your own or others' lives, devoid of respect. I'm at that point for the second time in my life. Medical mistake. First one was bad. This time, I just crossed traffic in front of articulated trucks and buses because there was nothing but emptiness. I saw half a dozen people in my 47 years by their own hand, but I just don't give a damn. I almost finished off a guy at a pizza restaurant today because his delivery man screwed up and delivered a quattro formaggi instead of a quattro stagioni. That's a life for a good pizza. I'm just one of hundreds of thousands walking the planet at this time. Think of it. Next road rage or parking problem. I could have ended a guy over a pizza delivered 1 hour late. No remorse, no feelings, just the void. Scraping together the shards of what was once me might happen. Results can vary. Some catch a train, some use a tie in a closet, some use a razor blade, some use meds. Some just utilize the void. People just step aside when I walk towards them. I radiate something which upsets them. I just walk, and I get a special register at the grocery store. They know. Just a trigger. That's scary, and there are many. Very scary.